Everybody. First decision report from the Chief Executive and staff is item 9.1, disestablishing of the Wairarapa Library Service. Stefan, would you like to come and join us, please? Take the paper as read, but if you could highlight any key points or extra information, it would be fantastic.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chair. This is a joint paper that has been prepared with Carsten District Council and is to be heard by their council today as well. And you would have seen in the media already some fairly comprehensive points on the decision that's in front of you and the reasons for it, and some FAQs as well to sort of help the public understand what's happening. Essentially, the decision is to split the Wairarapa Library Service. We have worked for a number of years now to try and create a service that works mechanically and operationally well. It has been subject to some real challenge. We've got two different financial systems, we've got two different sets of employment conditions. You know, the different staff have different employment contracts and terms and conditions. We have different IT systems. Sometimes the team working on 3 different IT systems. And the budgeting and planning of the respective councils is different, which has led to a lot of challenge for the administration and operation of the service as a whole. We've tried to solve these issues. We've looked at different models that we could use, both in New Zealand and overseas. We've looked at what a CCO would look like, for example, what a separate business unit would look like. We've considered one library taking over the service on behalf of the other one. None of those have proven viable. And so we find ourselves in the position that we're in today, which is reluctantly, I would say, choosing to separate the service out, and both councils will take control of their own library service. It's a much simpler and easier way of administering the operation of our library service. Now, we don't want to prejudice what is a very popular, very loved service for our community. We all know that our communities love the libraries, and we won't be doing anything that disrupts customer service. The customers won't actually notice the difference. This is really change that's designed around the operation and efficiency and the amount of time and effort that it takes to run a service in the background. So that's the guts of the paper. Happy to take any questions or comments from you.
Thank you, Stefan. Councillor Old, the very fast finger. First question to you.
Thanks, Stefan. This is actually quite disappointing, I have to say, that it's come to this. Over the years, of course, having been on council for a number of years, this service has always had its challenges. There is no doubt about that. But I've always felt that we can achieve a far better outcome if we work closer together across our district to a large extent. And this is just an example, unfortunately, that hasn't gelled in the manner that I would have thought. One of the things that I found interesting is that in our early days, we had a library services committee of elected representatives that reported back to council on a regular basis, and that sort of I guess kept us informed about some of the activities that were happening within the library service, the shared service as it stood. Regretfully, we didn't have this triennium, and I'm wondering whether or not that would have assisted in some of those challenges that you face, but in hindsight, probably not. But yeah, as I say, from my perspective, I'm disappointed that it's come to this. So.
Councillor, we will be working with Carsten District Council on areas where we can continue to cooperate, collaborate, that are of benefit to the customer, and our intention is that we'll enshrine those kind of things in an MOU where that's possible. And so while I think it's fair to say management certainly shares your sense of disappointment, it doesn't mean that we, the two councils, won't continue to try and work together where that makes sense for the service of our communities overall. Thanks.
Elon's the council on call.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Stefan, for the report. Out of the 19 staff, what's the split between SWDC and CDC?
I believe that Carsten has 3.5 or 3.8 staff in their library, and the remainder is ours.
So say 15.
Yeah, FTN.
Yep. Great, thanks. So on the page on page 16, it talks about the financial impact, and then there's a comment there that SWDC, there'll be an additional cost for transition for meeting the full cost of the library manager role. Because of this service has been disestablished, is that position going to be under the umbrella of affected by restructuring? And because if there's going to be additional costs come onto SWDC, is that going to reflect the fact that that manager will only be looking after a lesser number of staff than what they originally were?
Councillor, unfortunately, because we're in public session, I'm not able to really talk about any plans that we may have. It wouldn't be appropriate for us to talk about change processes or restructuring if they were to occur prior to that being fully communicated with the teams. We'd run ourselves into a bit of difficulty there. So I'm not able to provide a full answer to you because of the environment that we're in. But what I can say is that our intention is to make sure that when we split, South Warwick District Council has a fit for purpose, efficient structure and the right people in the right jobs in order to continue to deliver that high quality service to our community. But I can't really say any more than that at the moment, unless the CE wants to say anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for this paper, which I consider was very, very well written. And I realise, that it's a very sensitive issue, but I just was hoping that what I ascertained from reading it, that there was more challenges for working together on the library than there would be on other services that we might be wanting to get together. There would be quite so many challenges. That the true conclusion?
Yes, I think that there was a confluence of things in the library services that really challenged us: financial, IT, staff, and budget and planning. It was all live and impacting the ability of us to sort of achieve our own strategic goals through the libraries. The fact that some of the libraries are service centres and others aren't, and the impact of that on staff. The fact that the manager is actually responsible for the entire 19 people who work in the service, which was completely unsustainable. It did seem, councillor, that everything was happening at once in relation to the libraries, whereas in roading and waste and other shared services, it's a more simpler enterprise. I think that is a true point.
It had a perfect storm there, and yeah, so that's reassuring that the other areas don't have such a bad incidents. Thank you.
Councillor Plummer?
Yeah, I just want to follow on a little bit from what Kay's raised. It strikes me when you read this paper that the drivers for change, I'm not quite sure how any shared service would not have these same drivers for change when we're employing staff. And you talked about rubbish, but that's done as a contract with an external provider and so on. So that's a slightly different thing. And it just worries me a little bit that if we go down the shared services where one council provides some staff and another council provides another staff, you're going to end up in the same boat we are here, because the two systems are just not compatible. Different employment conditions, different IT systems, different billing systems, the whole lot. And so I was really interested by your comment that where you said that a CCO sort of model would not work, and I'm not quite sure why it wouldn't work.
Through the chair, we're not saying that it wouldn't work. It's cost prohibitive to follow that path at this time. Creating a CCO requires you to create an entity with directors and boards and another layer of compliance. It also requires full consultation with the community before you do so under the Local Government Act. Given the nature of where council is going through the changes of legislation and the requirement to follow the Local Waters Done Well legislation, once that's settled and we come out the other side, then there's lots of discussions to be had about the future services of council, but it's not appropriate today.
This probably wouldn't arise if we had one wire for council.
I think that
Conversation for a different day. Any other questions?
Just the other point that I would say is with the other shared services that we have one employing authority with those positions rather than mixed employing authorities. This one is unusual, other than the Longmont Roads, which has two. This one is the only other one that has staff employed by both councils.
Yes, mine is less a question, but a sort of further comment on things that other people said previously, because in my view, page 9.1, where it's got the financial impact, that does not address the financial impact. It says nothing. You know, we might save a bit of money here and we might cost a bit of money here, but what is the impact? And I find it very hard to think that probably we have no choice here, in as much as it's a bit like a marriage, and one of the partners seems to want to go off and, you know, look after the kids themselves. So the remaining partner has no choice. But I would have hoped that at least before too long, we would have okay, what might our library service look like in the future? What are some options, etc., etc. I would find it a little bit disagreeable, really, to think that one council can act in a way that forces another council to suffer increased costs, particularly.
Through the chair, I think it's fair to say that everyone's worked really hard to try and keep this service in a collaborative space. The pressures that we have seen for managing staff with two different sets of terms and conditions and multiple locations has resulted in previous managers' resignation and subsequently the current one. I think at the moment the only thing we know for certain is that the portion of the salary that was currently assigned to our partner will not be covered by them going forward, so we know we have that funding gap to cover. We are working towards what next steps might look like given the change of the dynamics, so we can't answer that question at this point, other than to say we will do everything within our power to stay within the existing budgets without breaching those. And also we have had very positive conversations with our colleagues at Carterton around making sure that where collaboration makes sense and it's cost effective to do so, and we can still continue to work together, we will do so. So if it makes sense to keep certain things together and operate them collaboratively, we will. But it's the physical operations of the sites that's the problem, not necessarily the technology or the library service themselves that's the problem. But we're still working through that. We've got a plan and a transition plan to move through to July. So does that answer your concerns?
Councillor Maynard and Councillor Bosley.
And I just wanted to say, actually, I actually really appreciated this report, and not just that, I actually appreciated the information that went out collaboratively between both councils prior to this coming to the table as well. So that way our public was, our ratepayers weren't caught unawares. So I actually really appreciated that. I thought that was that was good, that that's what, so often they talk about transparency, and that was great to see. So I just wanted to, take my hat off to you for that, for this paper that's come to the table. We find that this is the situation. At the end of the day, we wouldn't be the first place that, when you've got two different types of contracts, it's just not working, and it's very, very difficult to manage. So we have to look at what we can do to make things work, and this spells it out really clearly. So, just thank you for that.
Yes, Councillor Bosley.
Oh, I was actually going to say pretty much what Pip had just said, but with the slight addition that while some of this does feel still a little bit murky, a little bit cloudy in parts, I think for the most part it's pretty, it was a good paper to read. And yeah, it's the situation that we didn't really want to be in, but here we are.
Thank you. If there's no further comments at this point, we will move on to the recommendations. And looking for a mover, please, to note that since its inception, the Wairarapa Library Service has been struggling with significant operational challenges, stemming from different financial, IT, staffing, budgeting, planning, and service delivery systems / business processes between the two councils. These challenges have generated inefficiencies that have affected productivity and customer focus. 2, note that attempts have been made to improve our operational efficiency and streamline our systems. However, unfortunately, we have not been able to improve the model to the point that both councils can achieve their strategic objectives through the shared service model. 3, approve disestablishing the Wairarapa Library Service and return the management of our libraries to respective councils effective from 1 July 2025. Number 4, note that there is expected to be no impact to customers and levels of service will remain the same. Both councils have agreed and will implement a detailed transition plan with minimal disruption. That's the most important thing to me. 5, note that SWDC and CDC will continue to cooperate closely on shared activity to the benefit of its customers. We will actively explore future cooperation via an MOU. Councillor Elans, Councillor Gray is the seconder. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, no. The motion is carried. This is confirmed.
Charming.
That brings us on to the substantive portion of our agenda for the day. Item 9.2, the 2025-34 long-term plan deliberations report. Before I invite Nikki and Charlie and Paul McGuinness to take us through that report, I'd just like to kind of open this conversation by firstly acknowledging all of the work that has gone in to get us to this point. All of the community members who have taken part in the consultation and provided their submissions and feedback and given their time through hearings. And to ultimately acknowledge that we're at the pointy end of the stick, that today's conversations and decisions will have huge impact over the course of the next, definitely 3 years, but potentially 9 as well. I fully expect that the debate today will be passionate and just to remind everybody that no matter what side of that debate they sit on, I firmly believe that we are all here for the right reasons and we are all here with community and that we make. So whilst, yeah, the next few hours may be tricky, I'm sure we'll land in the right place eventually. Over to you, Nikki.
Through you, Chair. So I am here today to seek direction before the adoption of the 2025-34 long-term plan, which happens at the end of June. The LTP deliberations paper provides you with two key pieces of information before setting that direction today. The first is the feedback and the analysis from our community during the consultation period and submissions. Second, budget variations and budget requests, which have come through since the draft LTP budget was approved in March. As the Chair mentioned, I would also like to acknowledge and thank our community for their interest in this consultation. And in general, the submissions show a considered response to the questions that we have asked. Hopefully the paper has given you some understanding of the sentiment of the engagement that took place and the feedback of the submissions received. The second part of the paper is about the budget variations, and this part is asking you to note the budget variations which have taken place and to provide direction on the additional funding requests. There are three considered approaches today in the report. One is to include those budget requests in the LTP, the other is to not include them, and the third is to alter existing budgets and redirect through this. I will take the paper as read, but you need to answer any questions.
What I think I'll do is, because there are so many recommendations and so many options presented to us, and we'll start first and foremost with a mover and seconder to receive the 2025-34 long-term plan deliberations report. Thank you, Councillor Maynard. Councillor Macaulay to second. All those in favour of receiving the report, please say aye. Aye. All those against, no. And unless anyone has got a really great idea about how we move through this, I think we should probably move through and debate in order of the recommendations. The first the first sort of option of recommendation is one, to resolve to increase the community grant budget to sort of a value that would allow us to then reconsider these requests, or to debate each of them thoroughly today and add where we see fit to the LTP. So I'm going to open that for debate to begin with. Councillor Olds.
I think item 2 on there resolves to increase community and youth grant budget 2. I think it would be my preference to actually work our way through these ones here to see what falls out or drops away, and then go back to the recommendation for the amount of money that we would actually put into the community grant fund. That would be my personal preference.
Yeah, so don't necessarily disagree with you. I think just to be really clear for everyone around the table, the option right now is to today add any combination of A through 3A through F to the LTP today as a MOU, or alternatively to increase the grants budget to address those later. I will say that I have a level of discomfort around accepting MOUs in this nature. When we put the LTP document out for consultation, it asks some very specific questions and then it asks for feedback. The organisations that we have before us today have very smartly added their request for funding via an MOU to our LTP consultation, which is how they land here today. We haven't expressly advertised that ability to our community, and therefore I wonder how many other organisations, had they known this was a possibility, have added their organisations to the mix. One of the reasons we look to do an MOU is for certainty of funding over multiple years. And I can't think of a single community organisation that wouldn't want that level of certainty over a number of years. That's where I sit. I don't doubt for a second that each and every one of these organisations before us are living. I just wonder how we would rank them if we were ranking them against a much wider group. Councillor Holt?
Yes, further to that, Madam Chair, is that I personally don't feel comfortable about allocating funding via MOU at the end of a triennium. So it does commit incoming council to those commitments beyond October this year. So my view is that perhaps it would be better that if they were bundled into a community grant contestable fund and apply through those channels rather than through an MOU. That's my personal view.
Just following on from what you said, but we then, to make it a little bit simpler, and from what Colin's just said, look at 3 A, B, C, D, E, F first, and then what comes out of that may well decide what we do for item 2.
Sorry, was that?
So if we did, so if we did 3 A, F first,
Yes.
and then if they're yeses or nos, that may well influence how much goes into
If
for item 2.
If they're yeses, and please overhear correct me if they're wrong, if they're a yes, then they are today added to the LTP budget.
Yeah.
It's a one or the other, not a what, like and. So it's either increase the community grant budget to potentially allow for this request, or do them today.
Yep.
Yeah. So we can go through them all.
Sorry.
So you're specific, if you are approving any combination of 3A through F, you are specifically adding to the budget for those specific MOUs.
Yeah.
Your alternative is to just add more to the generic grants pool. That would allow some of these MOUs to be considered, or as the chair has said, other community groups to be considered who didn't feedback that way.
Sorry, that's it. And then Councillor.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'll just start with B through to F. And my personal view is that I will vote no to every single one of them. Essentially, what somebody is asking for here is for non-affected ratepayers to give their money to these organisations. That's just the simple, short fact of the matter. If ratepayers want to give money to A through to F, there is nothing to stop them personally doing it. But I can think of no reason why we should obligatorily force other ratepayers who don't have an interest in these activities to spend their money on them, when possibly, in fact almost certainly, those ratepayers have interests in any number of excellent activities which are not on this list. Now, as it happens, I was at the AGM of one of the A through F listed organisations, and I know for a fact that it's made a profit in the past year and it's expecting an even bigger profit this year. So why would they be coming to other ratepayers asking for them to fund the activities that they The same argument applies, in my view, to resolution 2 about increasing the community and youth grant. Again, I think it is useful to have a modest sum of money there that serves as a little bit of a safety valve under some circumstance. The fact that it's contestable forces us to actually set some priorities and decide what actually is of greatest value to the community. But once again, the people who turn up looking for those grants are people who have often decided that we are, if you like, an easier touch than doing a few other things, which many other organisations do. So I would vote for retaining the community and youth grant as it is, and declining all of the others.
Martin, councillor McCall.
Thank you, Chair. I think what I was going to say has all been said. I completely agree with what the Deputy Chair has said. I think it would be unfair for these be considered for MOUs when perhaps other organisations weren't aware of this process. Also very much in favour of what Councillor Old said, that we shouldn't be approving the commitment over several years at the end of a term. New council perhaps have to uphold. Thank you.
Councillor Maynard.
And just for clarification, because the original amount that is currently available in the grant, the community and youth grant, my understanding that's 120, is that correct? So if, and anything above that is increasing on what would go into the LTP and would be an increase to our rates, because this affects our rates directly. Is that correct?
And it's funded through general rates, so it's spread across the whole district.
So I guess not necessarily for the clarification of this call, but for the clarification of anyone who watches this back. Each of these requests are additional to any budgeting that was done prior to consultation, and therefore each and every one of them will have an impact on the total rates increase over and above what was consulted on. So if some of the comments of the table seem harsh, it is because that is the reality of the situation. Each of these, and as I've said, worthy as they are, will impact on that total rates take at our next steps. Charlie and then Councillor.
Sorry, through your chair. I'm possibly just a slight change to what I said earlier. It generally is an either or, but you could also resolve to add something for the community budget, the contestable fund, and specifically highlight one or more of those MOUs if you supported them.
Yes.
So, but either way, it's an increase on the rates take. Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Egan.
Thanks, Chair. I've just had a message from Councillor Woodcock, so he's putting his apologies in for today. He's unable to log in. He has shared with me his thoughts on these funding requests. So, am I able to?
Say,
Oh, yeah, usually.
to be able to, you have to be present either online or in the room to be able to.
Rightio, share that information. Okay. My thoughts on 3A through to 3F. I am unhappy about in the last year of our triennium, having a memorandum of understanding, tying this council and further councillors in the following trienniums to any funding for organisations going forward. If we are going to provide funding, I'm only prepared to fund it for 1 year, and if those organisations wish to come back to council in the following years, we'll then come back with the memorandum of understanding to put it to that council in the first year of the next triennium. I am focused. I think it's imperative that, and while the Deputy Mayor said that all of these organisations are worthwhile community groups and provide support, activity, etc., for the different parts of the community, like I think we haven't opened up to every single organisation within our community. We, in the last few years, we have employed a funding coordinator within council to help our community groups source fundraising from different organisations. So, from my view, that is something that has been put in place, and we're providing the seed money for that, for the wages of that person. To help our community organisations. I think that we should be prioritising what is important for our district, our infrastructure, our roading, our water. I think funding community groups, while it is arguably essential, it's nice to have.
Sure, I think we'll go councillor Maynard, councillor Bosley, councillor.
Fine, I was just playing with.
Oh, you just finished waving. Councillor Maynard, councillor.
Like post it. Yeah, I think one of the things that I was looking at with regards to this is the fact that, you know, in the past year, 18 months, we put in an amazing national search engine that Steve has been able to actually bring in, and we've brought in someone who is providing a role where they can actually sit with these different groups to help them go through nationwide, like these different grant opportunities. And this to me almost speaks like we need to be going out, like we need to be setting up a workshop or something like that where they're able to come and learn about these different things, an overview, and then perhaps like more of a deeper dive with these community groups to be able to actually access them, because a lot of the time they just don't know where to look. And we've got someone who's a specialist in that's sitting within our current council staff, and that's their role. So I would, I'd like to see that taken up there, which the cost has already been looked at previously and it's been done by the council. To me, that's already. So I don't believe that, the additional, that's where I'm struggling a little bit, because we've already put funds aside for that. So the same with the community and youth grant budget, was previously 150, now it's 120. I mean, I don't understand why it all came down from 150, but it's not a big amount, but if there's nothing else and we're looking at them, then that's perhaps a small way that this council could help, within our community, as an offering. That would be a lot more people going into it. But it's not a big amount, but I believe on top of the help that we could provide in that area of being able to help show people how to use the tools that are available, that are free on our website, but they can get really tricky. Filling in forms can be really tricky. And so it's it's a learning skill. And I think it would be really beneficial, especially to, those that are run by volunteers.
To agree with you. I certainly would be comfortable with the return of the 150,000 with a current budget. I think it's difficult place where we are currently balancing what we know to be a difficult time for community groups with what we know to be an incredibly difficult time for our ratepayers. And so trying to find some balancing and support for is the key today, to my mind. Councillor Bonner.
Yeah, just want to take a little bit of time and talk in general. In general, I agree with what our mayor said about the taking of ratepayers' money and giving to individual groups. And it comes as no surprise to people sitting around here that I've refused to sit on the grants committee because I fundamentally disagree with that. So in that regard, yeah. I think there are a couple of things in here that I will say, though, that are different between the grants to an individual organisation or a standalone organisation, be it a club or whatever, to some of the things that are in here. And I think we need to sort of look at the wider benefit for the whole community. And so it comes as no surprise, and everybody knows that I've been a very big supporter of the Greytown Sport and Leisure, which in here is the South Waiata Sports and Recreation. I think you need to remember that we asked this Greytown Sport and Leisure to go out, and this has been going on now for 3 years. 3 years, I think, Rosie, we've been going down this line of saying, how do we expand this organisation to be a whole district wide? And the benefit of that organisation, it is not club specific. It is it covers pretty much every part of our district in terms of whether it's old people playing bridge or young people playing bridge or indoor bowls or scouts or sport or any of the other organisations. So it is an umbrella organisation to enable those smaller groups which potentially don't have the ability to run themselves to survive. So that's what I would say there. And look, I'm always been, you all know that I've been a big fan of this organisation. So it comes to that. I'd like to talk a little bit about Cobble, and so I'm going to be saying yes to supporting that organisation because it is a district-wide organisation, and it's also something that we asked them to go out and investigate. And from the reports that we've got back, they have a lot of support from the organisations that were canvassed across the district. In terms of cobblestones, you know, you've heard me talk probably in the, well, Pip and Colin certainly have, that I never supported giving money to museums outside of the South Warraba, but we have more than cobblestones here. But a funny old thing, you know, and I've been asked to go on cobblestones regularly, and I don't because I'm not old enough to, you know, I'm not in that history thing. Colin might be slightly different, you know, but for me, for me, you know, retaining our history is really important. And it's not a popular, you know, it's not something people just go, oh, I'm going to donate to museums and things, but actually retaining our past and retaining our history is really important. And it's not just cobblestones, because we've got the Film Museum and we've got the other museums in South Warraba. These organisations actually do need our support. And I'm not sure if, you know, it might not be popular for everybody, but as you go through life, these things become popular later on in life generally. The education that these are providing for our next generation of people coming through are really important. If we don't support them, chances are they will disappear. So, and then the last one, again with a community focus, is the Featherston Community Centre. Now, I don't know anything about the Featherston Community Centre. I'll put that on the table. But the people from Featherston who spoke about this have said how vital this is to a community which largely is probably the community that actually needs this sort of centre more than Greytown and more than Marlborough.
Yeah, it's a South wide.
I understand that, but it's the way it's been described to us and the benefit it brings to Featherston and the people that need that service the most. I'm quite surprised that we're not sort of a bit more in support of that a little bit. So those three. The other ones, they're standalone things. They're business opportunities. For the hockey, they can compete. You know, they've got themselves in this mess. This is not for the community to get themselves out of it. If they want to compete for a budget, yep, and they can apply every year. Dark skies, we've done a huge amount as council, changing our district plan, changing everything, changing our lights. We've done our bit. It is, you know, I remember when it came up here, it was a great opportunity. Well, it's there. How about they actually ask the people who are going to benefit out of it? And same for the Warraba Five Trails Trust. You know, so, you know, my focus on this is community stuff that has a wide-reaching thing. I think we turn down some of these things at our own detriment, and we might find tomorrow, if we don't support them, they're not there and we go, oops.
Since we've moved into discussing some of the individual groups, I'm not sure, Nikki, if it's you or Matt, but I do have some questions around the supplementary reports that we were given on the Wairarapa sports and rec situation. Speak to. Looking at all of the reports that we were given, it's noted that there's approximately 100 sports and rec clubs across South Wai, each with diverse needs. Some of the top ones were the facilities, so upgrades to the facilities, funding, transport, volunteers and governance. I'm interested to understand, and I couldn't find any in any of the papers, how this one role will impact outcomes for such a large number of groups, and how council will know that these ratepayer funds, which are substantial across the 3 years, are seeing a good return on investment. Like, what does success look like?
Yes, we're in the process of.
Would you ask him to move to the top of the table?
So we're in the process of drawing this up. Timetables have been tight on this. We were intending, depending on the direction we got today, to take a paper to the 4th of June Strategy Working Committee outlining what this then looks like from a success point of view. So LTP perspective, from a governance perspective, from an EOI or tender process, and then the assurance process. So it'd be from that detail that we're still to garner over the next kind of month or so, to then put that forward to 4th of June Strategy Working Committee to say, do you still want to continue this? Because we only had the kind of agreement in March, it takes some time to build all of this. Naturally, we would have preferred to have done this 6 months ago. So we are cramming it in. It's basically live and ready, so it needs the LTP deadlines. So we're still pulling that all together.
Advisory group needs recommended activities document, and stated under actions proposed by the advisory group, that to establish a shared service across the district. And it said officers recommend that this option is socialised with key partners and clubs for endorsement. Is that being done?
Yep, so we've socialised it around the district clubs, and we've had, I think, 45 responses to that in terms of our recommended approach, which I think it was 43 have been in support of that, noting that their challenges particularly lie around governance, access to funds, coordination, etc. So we've had a good range of support. So we've had 17 clubs groups in Greytown support it. 5 in Martinborough, 3 in rural, 4 in Featherstone. We've had 4 schools/colleges across the district supported, and a couple of exercise providers as well. So it's been relatively well supported. So we have socialised that over the last few weeks.
Relatively well supported, but given 100 across the whole district, to get 5 groups of support in Martinborough and 3 in Featherstone, that's convincing.
Yeah.
Sorry. Any other questions?
And all of them already have lots of money.
That's great.
Not so much a question, but just, I guess, a suggestion for moving forward. My suggestion is that we move the community and youth grant into being a model closer to what we had with the community wellbeing fund. And I think that that would, the scaffolding of that was really good, very workable. And I think I would suggest that we increase the budget of that up to 200,000 from 120. The one that I would pick out of all of these that we've got listed as separate is the one for the South Wairarapa Sports and Recreation Service. I would love to fund everything, heaps and heaps, obviously. But with that particular one, we have engaged the community. There has been opportunity for people to feedback on that. It was widely publicised around the community. So I think that is one that we should look at moving forward with. Otherwise, we have a lot of sunk costs just to have gotten us to this point now. So my suggestion is that we would fund that. I hear what Councillor Olds is saying with not wanting to have the next council beholden to decisions we're making today. So I would suggest that we fund 1 year of that, but that the rest of the application goes into a bigger contestable fund that is then consulted on widely within the community.
Thank you, Councillor Old.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor. Well, really, it's a good question to you, man. Can you remind us what commitments we have actually already made to the Sports and Recreation Service? Because it seems to me that one of the options here with Part D is that, in fact, we stick to the commitments we've had, which, as I recall, was to fund them for, shall we say, the completion of an investigative process, which which would presumably be no more than a year at the most. And that can be done quite easily without an MOU or any further commitments longer term. But I seek your advice.
Yeah, so in terms of this sports and recs, I don't believe we have any commitments to this. This is a request from councillors in November 2023 to look at what are options to coordinate sports and rec across the district. Officers have done that piece of work, which is working with an advisory group of experts in the field, and then sports and rec clubs across the district and engaging with them. From that, we've put forward the paper in March, which set forward recommendations for how we might deliver that. The recommended option was a arm's length delivery partner to do it for us, because that's a technical skill set. But that is to where we got to. So the recommended option was that there is a cost associated with that, which is 80,000 per year for 2 years. However, it's within councillors' remit and decision whether you want to continue with that process or not.
Is there a possibility, Matt, to extend the scope of the advisory group to fulfil some of this early work before committing to funding of what is actually a part-time role for 80 grand?
Speak on behalf of the advisory group of whether they have the appetite to pick that up on the front.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I want to have a little conversation about the South Warrapa Sport and Recreation Service, because this is not new. This is something that we've been debating around this table now for probably the last 8 years, I would imagine. Certainly in my time, we've allocated funding to conduct a feasibility study to see how we can integrate sporting codes across South Warrapa, best utilisation of sporting venues, all those sorts of things, that package. We're, I guess, to some extent regurgitating what we've already done. I don't know if Matt's had the opportunity of looking back at some of the history about some of the work that's been done in this space. I know that we appointed, I think when Paora Munston was headed up the sports, Greytown Sport and Leisure, I think that we funded him to do some investigative work around the other 2 towns. I think here, no, he wasn't involved, but so we just seem to be going over old ground in my view, I've always been a staunch supporter of actually bringing all our codes together, but also the best utilisation for our sporting venues and green space as well, so that could all be coordinated into one grant. You've got to get buy-in. I mean, if you're not going to get 100% buy-in from the codes, it just ain't going to work. And that's what happened last time. The wheels fell off it. It just didn't work. So I think, are we on a hiding to hell or whatever? That's my view on this. I've got other things to say on some of the others, but I'll just focus on this one at the moment.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Olds, Councillor Maynard, Councillor Elams, and then I'll indicate that I think, given that there's clearly different views around the room, that we'll move to item 3. We'll go through each of A to F, we'll vote, and then we'll circle back to 2 and see what appetite lies there to increase or not. So Councillor Maynard, Councillor Elams.
So reading through all of the documentation with the sports and recreation, because we asked for more information to come back through. A lot of this is the same information, but that's okay, because that's, we'll try and work it out in our head. I guess one of my big things is you said that you went to all of the sports and recreational groups, and then when the thing went out, you got 41 responses back from 41 groups.
Response back from 45.
45 groups, and from that, 18 from Greytown, 5 from Martinborough, 3 from rural, and 4 from Featherston. Is that correct? They're in support of carrying on with this, because this was the reason why it hit this hurdle last time. Is that there just wasn't any buy-in from, and trust me, I put it out as well, and I had lots of people from different groups here in Martinborough saying that they'd responded, that they knew it was going on. So whether or not they responded, it actually comes down to whether or not there's that appetite. If you want something, you will respond. and, you know, like talk about these. But some of the information is really, you know, like has really helped. And that's where I came upon that fundraising, you know, like being able to help, because that is another governance skill that you have with a lot of these ones, and that they're asking for help to be able to keep maintaining their, so it's how we can actually do this in a way, because I was on council with Councillor Olds when the previous one was done, and there wasn't the appetite there from the other areas. And that's what's really difficult here. You're asking for a substantial amount that doesn't actually cover still even a full-time position, but it's still a lot of money for something that it's already, we've gone through a whole lot of stuff again, and there's still not that appetite there from our, you know, from the majority of our groups that we have within the other towns. And that's, it comes down to the figures for me, and I'm just like, well, you know, when it comes to how much we're going to put our rates up by, it's actually something that people are wanting, or is this just still one main area that is needing this? And that's how I kind of see it at the moment. So district-wide, I'm not getting that bite that's saying this is what they need, this is what they're wanting. So, and that's only with regards to that, you know, because we're talking about this one.
Councillor Elams, Councillor Gray, and then we're going to carry it.
Thanks, Chair. Just reading through the report, I noted there was mention of a previous resolution, and that was from SWC meeting on the 12th of March. And in that recommendation 4 or resolution 4, that was voted on to approve a 2-year funding contribution of 161k towards the delivery of a single South Wairarapa sports and recreation service as part of these deliberations, and then to be reviewed for 2027-37 LTP. So we approved the funding contribution then.
To come to this meeting to deliver.
Right. Okay.
It's my understanding.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, so it was approved on the 12th of March. Brought forward to today's deliberation.
Okay, so thank you. So for that, in favour of that resolution was myself, Councillors Plummer, Bosley, Maynard, Gray, Edwards, McCauley and Woodcock, and against was Mayor Martin. So no, thank you for that clarification.
And then we will move on to resolutions.
I guess the point I wanted to make through you, Chair, to Councillor Maynard, that if you know, we're looking at a pool of 100 groups and there was 45 respondents, so 45% response rate. I don't know that we've had that sort of feedback on any other consultation that we've had where there's been 45% that have replied, and of the ones that replied, a large chunk of them are from Greytown. And to my mind, there's a person in Greytown who's already operating within this space and has been, and you can look at the area that we have in our district where it's known for its sports, it's known for its clubs. There's a really, there's cohesiveness there. The way that I see that is that even though we're not necessarily saying we're going to be employing this one person and expanding that role, there's demonstrated value of having somebody performing that function in that area. And this is an opportunity to move that across the district. So I think looking at the same numbers, I see a different side to it.
Only an opportunity if the club want to take it up, and we don't currently have data that say that the club areas want to take it up. That's the data we're missing. That the respondents who were offered this as a model didn't shout from the rooftops that this was the model that they were looking for.
But they also didn't shout that they didn't.
Not funding people because they say they don't want something.
No, but like if you're looking at feedback on it, right? If we've gone out and we've said, hey, everybody, what do you guys think about this? If we had a bunch of people who responded back saying, no, this is terrible, we hate it, we like what we're doing, then I think that would shift it a little bit, but we didn't get that response. We had a lot of people who said, yes, great, and then a small number, 3 out of 45, did you say, that were against it?
It's all-
So I think it's,
29 people, 29 groups in favour out of 55. I've got 17, 5, 3 and 4, that's 29.
We've had 4 against. There are a number of groups, then there are a number of exercise providers and schools and colleges. So there's 3 separate categories.
You said
Majority.
the numbers you said before was 17 from Greytown, 5 from Martha, 3 rural, 4 from Featherston, that's 29.
4.
And
I'm sorry, I've got the. All groups, clubs or groups, Featherston, or against. 17 in support from Greytown, none against. 5 in support from Martinborough, none against. 3 from rural. None against. In terms of exercise providers, we've had 2 from Featherston in support, none against. Nothing from Greytown, nothing from Martinborough, nothing from rural. District-wide exercise providers, we've had 4 for, 0 against. In terms of schools / colleges, we've had 1 in Featherston support, 2 in Greytown support, 1 in Martinborough support, none against.
That's just confused things even more. Where's this information?
It's not the community.
moving along, we will move to item number 3. And what we'll do is we'll run through each.
Sorry, no, so I just really want to clarify this. Are you saying that all of those people are for, and there's 3 that were against, is that right? So everyone else was for having this model? Is that what the question was?
45 respondents, 41 support, 4 against.
4 against. So against the model of combining.
Setting up a secretariat. Yes.
Because.
How many?
Give me that, yeah, that was the breakdown that was asked for.
That should be in the report.
Yeah, but that is the number of respondents. So there's all the non-respondents. Yeah.
The non should be just an automatic no against.
How many minutes?
Quiet on the table, please. Resolve. So we'll go through each.
Because it's not any of the information I have to read.
So we'll start with item 3A. Confirm additional operational budget for an MOU of 18,400 per year. Looking at whether we support this or not, and then we'll go back and chat about years. For the Wairarapa Sports Artificial Surface Trust for the hockey turf replacement. So what we're going to do, we'll go through A through F, and then we'll return to item 2, which is the community grants. So I'm looking for a mover to move the additional funding for the hockey, please.
Can I just ask a question before you go to the resolution itself? Some of these amounts that are being applied for in their totality, sort of up there, is there an opportunity to confirm a lesser amount, or is that the amount?
Well, that's the amount that they've requested. At any point, we could say we'll give you 5,000 or 2,000, 500,000,
Yeah,
9,000.
yeah.
That's the conversation we're about.
So on that basis, you're calling for a resolution on the artificial, I would suggest, in my view, would be $10,000 per for the first year and beyond.
Sorry, just to.
They already have it.
That actually suits more for the contestable fund.
Okay, so
If you are not going to approve the 18,400.
Yep.
You could choose to add some to the contestable fund and then decide how much to,
okay.
Then direct them back to contestant application.
If they don't get over in secondary, it just allows them to table anyway.
Big lapses.
Yeah, so I'm looking for a mover for item A.
Oh, sorry,
You'll move that?
I'll move, yeah, that not that amount though.
No, you have to move.
Yeah.
that amount or not.
Yeah.
So you're moving the 18.4 or not?
I might be the only one.
Moving the 18.4. Do I have a seconder?
Sounds like a fact option.
Yeah.
Going once, going twice.
No seconder, so that one will lie on the table.
I don't believe it lies on the table.
It's out.
It's lost, sorry.
So is that,
Okay, okay.
Dead in the water. Item 3B, confirm additional operational budget for an MOU of $10,000 per year for X years for the Wairarapa Dark Sky Reserve for operational support. Janice, can you confirm that that's additional
Right.
5,000?
I thought it was an additional feature to make it 10.
Which you was an additional 5.
So it's additional 5 to make it 10.
Yeah.
I'll move that.
We've got a mover. Do I have a second?
I'm happy to second that.
Councillor Old is seconder. All those, do we want to talk about years? Is that for 1 year?
One.
Only 1 year.
Only
yeah.
1 year.
For 1 year? So what I'm looking for now is all those in favour, please, of confirming additional operational budget for an MOU of $10,000 per year for 1 year for the Wairarapa Dark Sky Reserve for operational support.
Additional 5,000. Well,
Yeah.
So that is at 5,000, a total of 10. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, no.
Aye.
It's everybody except one.
Okie dokie. Get it this one.
So that is also lost.
So that sticks with the 5.
You're right, so that's
5,000 you've already got there. It's the additional.
Item 3C, confirm additional operational budget for an MOU of $20,000 per year for X years for Wairarapa 5 Towns Rail Trust for governance and operational support. Looking for a mover, please, Colin, and I'm based on your earlier comments, it would just be for 1 year.
Correct.
Looking for a seconder for that, please. No, that motion is lost. Item D, confirm additional operational support. And when I say additional, that's additional to the what is currently budgeted. That's why it says additional.
No, it's an extension. That's why it's additional. Yeah. So there is nothing budgeted in the 25 to 26 years for that. It was a 1 year budget before.
Confirm additional operational budget for MOU 80,600 per year for X years for delivery of a single South Wairarapa sports and recreation service. Mover is Councillor Plymouth, seconder is Councillor Gray. How many years?
The 2 years we talked about it last week.
Any discussion before we move to a vote? All those in favour of confirming additional operational support from MOU of 80,600 per year for 2 years for delivery of a single South Wairarapa sports and rec service, please say aye.
Aye.
Yeah, so we've got Councillor Elam's, Councillor Bosley, Gray and Plymouth in favour. All those against, please say no. Councillor Maynard, Bowles, Violet, myself, Councillor McCauley and Demir. Motion was lost. 3E, confirm additional operational budget for an MOU of 25,000 per year for X years for cobblestones for operational costs. Looking for a mover, please.
So once again, this gets back to the total amount, Madam Chair. And
We will deeply debate the community grant.
yeah, but if we endorse $25,000 by way of resolution now, that's locked in. So effectively, what I'm saying is that I'd be really supportive of locking in some funding for, but not 25K. Can we not do that?
So that's the next debate.
No, because you're making,
Where's the next debate?
you're making it contestable, so the request is for 25,000, or you direct them back to the contestable fund and you increase them.
everybody.
Can you not propose an amendment to the motion?
Not only thing.
We've already been through this with one and said no. Why would we change this one? They're the options.
Then perhaps we should have moved them all onto a contestable fund and then requested that they make an application of that.
Was the goal?
Really?
Exactly, that's how I raised it, did I not raise
At
that?
the end of this,
The pool with everyone else.
that will be the next conversation.
Yeah.
You've been through these.
So, I mean, I really want to see us support cobblestones.
Yeah.
And so, yes,
Okay, so I'm going to move.
for 1 year and then to have further conversations with them and the rest of our
Yeah.
residents.
I agree. Yep, thank you.
So you're moving 25,000, councillor?
Well,
Well,
yes, what's there for 1 year?
And you're seconding it, thank you. So we've got, confirm additional operational budget for an MOU of 25,000 per year for 1 year, cobblestones for operational costs. Any debate?
So I'm looking at the Cobblestones most recent financial report. In 2022, they made a profit of $213,000. That year, membership and donations were over 46,000. The following year, they made a profit of 127,000. And donations and membership fees were 53,000. And in the most recent financial information they've got, which covers 3/4 of the 2024 financial year, at that point, 3/4 of the way through the year, they had gathered $47,000 in membership and donations, and their profit at that stage was $73,000. So I can see no reason at all why I should want to increase somebody else's rates to allocate it to an organisation which is clearly doing.
You, Madam Chair, I'm just curious about the profit. Do you say profit? Is that a surplus that they would reinvest, or is it? I mean, it's not profit in terms of.
Well, it's surplus.
The hearing,
If they can reinvest it, they can pay the bills.
that, and I'm not sure if it's those full figures, but I recall that they made reference to the fact that they had, that their books were healthy because they had money for capital development.
Yep.
That wasn't necessarily available for operational spend.
Yep, correct. And I recall that, and I've probably noted it here somewhere in my many LTP conversations. It's not profit. I mean, it's, while you may use the word profit, it's actually a surplus that they would have to reinvest.
But because
Yeah, but to reinvest back, and I can't see anybody taking
5K.
advantage of it by.
Well, 50 grand
Can.
bank.
Oh,
It's 50 grand sitting in the bank.
don't need money though.
No, pretty.
Yeah, they're not hard.
Yeah, I'm still going to stick by mine.
Toya make less than them.
So, all those in favour, please, of confirming additional operational budget for an MOU of 25,000 per year for 1 year's cobblestone for additional costs, please say aye.
I,
So, sorry, can you just give your hands up? So we've got councillor Olds, Maynard, Elam's, Bosley and Plymouth. For those against, please. So we've got Violet, myself, councillor Gray, councillor Fullerton. Right. Yes,
casting vote, your chairmanship.
no,
Don't use your casting vote then if it's a tie source.
Yes.
That's correct.
Oops. Well, that feels like I'm using a casting vote anyway.
Correct.
You're locked in debate, which means you haven't got,
Probably not reading it.
you can.
None of us are saying that we don't think that cobblestones is worth funding. I think it's just about, we want everybody to follow the same process and have, all of the groups and organisations within our community be able to have a fair fight over what small amount of funding that we have. The only one on this list that we have had any sort of consultation around has been the Sports and Rec Service. The rest of it hasn't come out from the community. It hasn't been an open and transparent process.
Yeah, they presented, they submitted and presented.
In terms of advertising to the community that they can apply to us for an MOU that will go for several years.
Sure.
That's not something that everybody's had the opportunity to engage in, just the people that are in the know. And I think what we're really trying to do here is have a different process to make it a level playing field, sports reference, level playing field for everybody with the funding.
Fairness to the
Good.
process.
MOUs, like, we should have just.
Really gets back to a contested fund.
Community.
Yeah, which is where we're going, and I just reiterate what councillor Gray said, my no vote isn't against cobblestones, it's just that currently I can't weigh cobblestones $25,000 need against the needs of our other museums or groups because they're not currently in front of me, and we have the tiniest amount of funding to be able to give across all, and giving in this environment just doesn't sit right with me. Councillor Bosley.
This question for Charlie. Thanks, Chair. Charlie, the total requested through the MOUs, was it 300 and something thousand?
Well, per year, so just for the first year, it was 154 if you'd approved all of them.
We have 150, so we will be looking at adding that to the budget if we keep going out as we are. That would equal what in terms of a rates increase?
So your current grant of 120,000 on average costs ratepayers $16 per year. If you were to go back to 170,000, which was what it was before your triennium, that would go up to 22.71, so almost $7 more per ratepayer. 200,000 would be $26.80, which is $10.70 more than the current budget per ratepayer.
And one their total rates increase, it would take us from 4 point something to over 5.
So what number are you wanting me to increase to?
It was 200k.
So if you wanted to put it,
Save it to 200k.
200k, yeah. If you put it at 200k.
hang on one moment, please, caller.
This couple would get it on.
You're looking
Not fair.
0.7.
I mean, I think we've just had such a clear message that we must keep the rates down. I just think that's such the message that we got.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Chair.
So we're going with the motion is lost, and we're moving to F. Confirm additional operational budget for funding of 50,000 for 2025/2026 for the Featherston Community Centre. So I'd be looking for a mover and a seconder. Mover. It's lost, which makes me circle back now to resolution 2 and a debate or discussion to resolve to increase the community and youth grant budget by a figure the 2025/26 year. It is, as discussed earlier, currently 120,000, which was a reduction, I think, 2 years ago of 50,000. Any discussion? Councillor Graham.
I would suggest that we raise it to 200,000.
I would support that.
So could I have somebody to reiterate what effect that would have
The move
on the rates?
was 4.7.
4.7.
Yeah, so the overall total rates increase would go from up to 4.7.
From 4.5, was it?
From 4.5, yeah.
4.7.
And as a average ratepayer, that would be $10.69 per average rating unit.
And that's it.
More than the 120.
Additional to what that's.
Additional, yeah. So it takes it from $16.03 to $26.72. Now that is an average.
Further discussion? Clean the case, looking for resolve to increase the community and youth grant budget to 200,000 2025/26 year. Councillor Gray, Councillor Bosley is the seconder. All those in favour, let's say aye.
Right.
All those against, no.
No.
In the mayor, you're against. Motion is 1. That us adjourned for a morning tea.
Thank God for that.
Very thank God.
That's,
We are.